The prince mocked the girl covered in dust, until he saw the ring he himself had lost years before. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The bells of Winthorpe rang with such force that the air itself seemed to tremble. Carriages lined the front drive, horses snorted, and the scent of wet gravel filled the morning. After years of war, Prince Edmund had returned to his ancestral home. The courtyard gleamed with uniforms, laughter, and silken gowns that swayed like banners in the breeze. Trumpets blared. The nobility crowded the marble steps, eager to be seen by him and by each other. Through the open gates came servants carrying trays of wine, and among them, moving hesitantly, was Lily Whitmore. Her apron was torn, her shoes caked with mud. The storm from the night before had not spared her. Dust clung to her like a second skin. She tried to stay behind the others, but her hands trembled around the tray she carried. When she saw the prince dismount and hand his gloves to a footman, something inside her gave way. It was now or never. He was taller than she remembered. His hair had darkened, his face hardened by war. Yet the same pride still lived in the angle of his jaw, the careless ease of a man who had never been denied. The crowd erupted as he raised a hand in greeting, the sunlight striking his uniform like polished steel. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs. She stepped forward, her voice caught in her throat. "Your Highness," she called. At first, no one heard. The noise swallowed her words. She tried again, louder this time. "Your Highness!" The sound cut through the laughter. Heads turned. The steward, Mr. Haldridge, frowned from the steps. "Back to your post, girl," he hissed under his breath. "This is not your place." But Lily did not move. She set down the tray, straightened her back, and took another step forward. The crowd parted slightly, unwilling to touch her dusty skirts. When she reached the base of the steps, she fell to her knees. "Please, Your Highness, I beg for a hearing." Edmund turned, the polite smile of a man accustomed to adoration frozen on his face. He looked down at the girl kneeling in the dirt. "What is this?" he asked. "A performance?" Laughter rippled through the onlookers. Haldridge descended quickly, whispering something about an insolent servant. Edmund lifted a hand to silence him. "Let her speak. I would hear what cause drives a maid to interrupt her prince." Lily raised her chin. Her voice shook but did not falter. "My name is Lily Whitmore. My father, Thomas Whitmore, served this estate for 20 years until he was accused of theft and dismissed. He died under that disgrace. I have proof of his innocence, and I ask only that you hear it." Murmurs spread like fire. A servant daring to demand justice. It was unheard of. Edmund studied her, uncertain whether to be amused or offended. "You choose quite the occasion for your plea," he said dryly. "Do you often bring your grievances to royal receptions?" Her cheeks flushed. "Forgive me, sir, but I have been refused every other door. My father was no thief. He was loyal to your family until the day he died." Haldridge stepped forward, his tone sharp. "This is madness. Her father was dismissed for good reason. She seeks attention, nothing more." But Lily's eyes burned with determination. "He was dismissed because he knew the truth about the fire, the one that took Her Majesty the Queen. He saw something that night, something your steward wished to keep hidden." The courtyard went silent. Even the horses seemed to still. Edmund's expression hardened. "You dare speak of that night?" "I do," Lily answered, "because my father was there, and he died with your ring in his hand." For a moment Edmund said nothing. Then he laughed, short and sharp, the sound brittle. "My ring? And where is it now, this miraculous proof?" Lily hesitated, then slowly lifted her hand. A simple silver band encircled her finger, dull with age yet unmistakable in its engraving. Gasps broke out around them. Edmund's smile vanished. He stepped down from the stair, his boots sinking slightly in the gravel. "Where did you get that?" "It was found in the ashes of the West Wing," Lily said quietly. "My father kept it, hoping to return it. When he was dismissed, he gave it to me and said that one day, the truth would find its way home." He reached for her hand before stopping himself, as though the sight alone burned him. The laughter that once filled the courtyard was gone. Only the rustle of silk and the whisper of wind remained. "That ring was lost the night my mother died," Edmund murmured. "You expect me to believe your father stumbled upon it by chance?" "I expect you to believe that he was loyal," Lily said, "and that the wrong man was condemned." Holdridge's voice rose, desperate now. "Enough of this. She lies. She stole that ring as her father stole before her. She should be punished, not heard." Lily turned to the steward, her anger trembling beneath restraint. "If I am lying, let the truth be proven. Search your records, your ledgers, your conscience." Edmund's gaze shifted between them, confusion warring with pride. He wanted to dismiss her, to restore the order her defiance had broken. But the ring gleamed like a memory he could not suppress. For years he had believed it lost in the flames that had taken his mother. Yet here it was, cold and real, on the hand of a servant girl. "Your name was Whitmore," he said slowly. "Your father served here before the fire." "Yes, Your Highness. He tended the orchards. He taught me to read the names carved on the trees. He said even a tree remembers kindness." Something softened in her tone, something that reached him despite himself. But then the murmurs of the nobles swelled again. Amusement, disapproval, the sound of judgment. A prince could not show mercy before an audience that thrived on cruelty. He straightened, retreating into arrogance like armor. "Your story is touching," he said coldly. "But sentiment is not truth. You come before me covered in dust, wearing a ring that belongs to the crown, and speak of conspiracies. If I did not know better, I would think you a thief." Lily flinched as laughter returned to the crowd. "I am no thief," she whispered. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "Look at yourself," he said. "Rags and dirt, and yet you speak to me of justice. What right have you to accuse a man of honor?" Her hands clenched. "The right of one who has nothing left to lose." The words struck harder than he expected. For a heartbeat, silence hung between them. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the courage born not of pride, but of despair. Yet he turned away, unwilling to let that truth reach him. "Holdridge," he said, his voice measured, "see that she is removed from my sight. This farce has lasted long enough." Holdridge bowed, satisfaction glinting in his eyes. "At once, Your Highness." Lily rose slowly, her knees unsteady. "If you send me away, the truth will remain buried," she said. "But one day it will rise, and you will wish you had listened." He did not answer. He could not. Her words followed him as he climbed the steps, each syllable echoing against stone. Behind him, guards moved to escort her out. The nobles resumed their laughter, eager to erase the discomfort she had brought. As she was led through the gates, Lily turned for one last look. The prince stood among his admirers, his expression unreadable. The sun caught the silver of his buttons, and the gleam on his desk where, moments earlier, he had placed his gloves. The ring, however, no longer rested on her hand. Hours later, the courtyard emptied. The revelers withdrew, and silence returned to Winthorpe. In the great hall, Edmund stood alone by the window. The laughter that had once pleased him now seemed distant, almost cruel. He remembered the fire, how the smoke had filled the corridors, how his mother's voice had called out his name before vanishing into the flames. He had been told there was nothing left to find, no keepsake, no token. But now that ring had appeared from the ashes of memory itself. He poured himself a glass of wine, but it trembled in his hand. Could the girl have spoken truth? Could her father have found the ring that night, before being cast out? His mind resisted the thought, yet doubt had already taken root. He turned to the steward, who lingered at the door. "You dismiss the Whitmore family," Edmund said. "Why?" Holdridge bowed. "Your Highness, the man was insolent. He accused others of wrongdoing without proof. I acted only to protect the estate's honor. And the accusation? Baseless gossip. He hinted that the fire was not accidental. You know well that your mother's candle overturned. That is what the investigators concluded." "Yes," Edmund murmured. "That is what they concluded." Holdridge hesitated. "Shall I have the girl punished for her outburst?" Edmund turned toward the window again. "No, let her be. The steward blinked. Your Highness? I said let her be. Dismiss her from my sight, not from her life. Holdridge bowed, though his jaw tightened. As you wish. When the door closed, Edmund exhaled. He placed his hand against the glass, watching the fading light stain the courtyard gold. Somewhere beyond the gate, that servant girl was walking into the fields, still clutching the ring he could not forget. He should have felt relief at her absence. Instead, he felt the stir of something heavier, an unease that refused to rest. That night, long after the candles had burned low, he found himself in the west wing. The ruins long sealed since the fire. Dust coated the floor, and the scent of char lingered faintly. He knelt near the hearth where the flames had begun and touched the cold stone. What if she had spoken the truth? What if the fire had not been chance? Footsteps sounded behind him. Holdridge again, carrying a lamp. Your Highness, this place is dangerous. The walls are unstable. Tell me, Edmund said quietly. Were you here that night? The steward froze. I was in the servants' quarters. I came when the alarm rang. Did you see my mother? No, sire. Only the smoke. Edmund rose. You knew my mother planned to audit the accounts that week, did you not? Holdridge's throat moved as he swallowed. Of course, Your Highness. It was routine. Was it? The silence that followed was thin as glass. Then Holdridge bowed and backed away. Rest, sire. War has wearied you. Do not trouble yourself with ghosts. He left quickly, but Edmund remained. The ring's image haunted him, the engraving, the way it caught the sun, the way the girl had trembled yet refused to lower her eyes. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again. The prince's reflection in the window looked like a stranger's. He whispered to himself, barely audible, how could she have it? The question would not leave him. It lingered even when dawn came, even when the servants began their duties anew. And when he finally returned to his chamber, exhausted, he found something lying beneath his door, a small folded note on plain paper. No seal, no name, only 3 words written in a hurried hand. The servant is right. The morning broke grey and uncertain over Winthorpe. The prince had not slept. The note still lay on his desk, the ink slightly blurred where his thumb had pressed against it. 3 words, nothing more. And yet they beat against his thoughts like a drum. The servant is right. He had no proof of its sender, no reason to trust it, and yet it had pierced through all his doubts. When the steward entered that morning, Edmund was already dressed, his face pale from wakefulness. Holdridge, he said, I wish to speak of the Whitmore matter once more. The man stiffened, but bowed smoothly. Of course, Your Highness. I trust you were not troubled by her foolishness. I was troubled, Edmund said evenly. By the ring, by her words, by the memory of my mother's last night. Holdridge's expression remained polite, though his eyes flickered. Sire, grief can twist memories. Best not to reopen wounds long closed. I will decide which wounds are worth reopening, Edmund said. You will have the old records brought to me. The ledgers, reports, any notes from the investigation of the fire. Everything. The steward hesitated. Those papers are sealed, Your Highness. They are of no consequence now. Then it should not trouble you to fetch them, Edmund said, his voice quiet but final. Have them in my study before noon. Holdridge bowed again, though the movement seemed heavier this time. When he left, Edmund turned toward the window. Beyond the courtyard he saw a figure near the orchard, small and alone. Even from that distance he knew it was her. Lily had been ordered back to her duties under another housemaid's watch. She moved carefully, aware that eyes followed her wherever she went. Some called her bold, others foolish. But none spoke to her. She carried water to the laundry, scrubbed the steps, and kept her silence. Only in the shade of the apple trees did she allow herself a breath of rest. When the sound of approaching boots reached her ears, she straightened quickly. Edmund stopped a few paces away, his expression guarded. The sunlight through the branches cast restless shadows over his face. I should not speak with you, he said, almost to himself. Yet I find that I must. Lily set down her bucket. You wish to accuse me again, Your Highness? No, I wish to understand. He looked at her hand. The ring was gone. Where is it? In the steward's keeping, she said. He demanded it after you left. Said it belonged to the crown. And you gave it? She nodded. I had no choice. I am a servant. A servant obeys. He looked away, shame flickering in his chest. You said your father found it the night of the fire. Tell me what else he told you. She hesitated, then said quietly. He said he saw someone leaving the west wing before the flames rose. A man, carrying papers. When he tried to speak, no one listened. The next morning he was dismissed. Did he name the man? No, Your Highness. Only that he wore fine shoes. Too fine for a servant. Edmund's hands tightened at his sides. And you came here to accuse Holdridge of that? I came to beg for truth, she said simply. My father's grave is empty of peace. He studied her face, the exhaustion beneath her calm. If I were to find proof, he asked softly, what would you do then? Her answer came without hesitation. I would forgive, if forgiveness were asked. That answer followed him back to the manor like a ghost. At noon, Holdridge returned with a stack of dusty ledgers and a sealed envelope. The papers you requested, sire, he said. Though I warn you, they will not comfort you. Edmund took them without reply. When the door closed, he sat at the desk and began to read. Hours passed. The sun crossed the room and faded. By evening, candlelight flickered over pages lined with neat handwriting and subtle deceit. Accounts that did not balance, purchases signed under false names, and then his mother's handwriting. He froze. The final page was a memorandum dated the week before her death. It mentioned irregularities in the steward's accounts and a plan to question him privately. The last line stopped mid-sentence, as if interrupted. A chill ran through him. He pressed his hands against the desk and whispered, Mother, what did you find? The door creaked. Holdridge stood there again, silent for a long moment. You have read enough, I think. Too much, perhaps, Edmund said. Tell me, was my mother's fire truly an accident? The steward's face barely moved. Of course it was. You know the report. I know the report, Edmund said. I no longer trust it. Holdridge's voice softened, coaxing. Your Highness, grief clouds the mind. You risk dishonoring her memory by chasing phantoms. Better that, Edmund said, than dishonor it by silence. The older man inclined his head slightly, then stepped back. As you wish, sire. That night, Edmund sent a quiet order through a trusted footman. He wanted the old servants summoned, the gardener, the cook, the stable hand who had served since before the fire. Each came nervously, unsure why the prince sought them after so many years. They spoke in low voices. The gardener remembered hearing raised tones between the queen and Holdridge. The cook recalled the steward ordering her away from the west wing hours before the fire. And the stable hand, he swore he saw the steward ride out that night with a trunk, though he returned before dawn. Each piece of memory fit like shards of glass. Edmund dismissed them gently, thanking them for their courage. When the last had gone, he leaned back, heart pounding. It was true. The servant girl had not lied. At dawn, he went to the orchard again. Lily was there, collecting fallen apples. Her hands were raw from work. When she saw him, she dropped a curtsy, unsure whether to speak. I owe you an apology, he said. She blinked. For what, Your Highness? For every word I spoke in pride. For the laughter I allowed. For calling you a liar. She stood very still. You found something then. I found everything I needed, he said. Your father was innocent. And my mother. She was braver than I ever knew. Lily lowered her gaze, her breath shaking. Then justice has spoken. Not yet, he said. Justice is not complete until truth is made public. She looked up quickly. You would expose your own steward? I would expose any man who betrayed her memory, he said. Even if that man served me since childhood. Her eyes filled, though she tried to hide it. Then your mother would be proud. He almost smiled, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed on him. I will need your help, he said. You are the only witness I trust. Me? You and your father's words. You may recall things others have forgotten. Will you stand beside me when I confront him? She hesitated. He will try to silence me again. Not while I draw breath, Edmund said. That promise sent a flicker of warmth through her. For the first time since her father's death, she felt safe enough to breathe. Later that day, Haldridge found her scrubbing the stone steps. You have caused quite the stir, he said in a low voice. The prince grows restless, asking questions he should not. You filled his head with nonsense. I told him only what was true, she replied. Truth is a dangerous luxury, he said, leaning closer. Keep your tongue still, girl, or you will find yourself dismissed again, this time with no mercy. She met his gaze steadily. If I am dismissed, others will still speak. You cannot silence the past. His hand twitched, but he caught himself. You will regret this. When he walked away, her heart thudded. She knew danger when she saw it, yet fear could not outweigh resolve. That evening she slipped a note beneath the prince's study door, warning him of Haldridge's threat. By the time he read it, the steward was already gone from the manor. He had taken the carriage bound for the northern estate under pretense of business. Edmund understood at once. He means to flee, he said. He ordered his horse prepared, but the roads were already slick with rain. You cannot ride tonight, sire, his aide warned. It is too dark. Then light the way, Edmund said. He left the manor as thunder rolled again across the fields. The trail was faint, but he followed it, the wind biting through his coat. Each hoofbeat echoed the girl's voice. My father saw someone leaving the west wing before the flames. He rode until the lamps of a coaching inn appeared through the downpour. There, in the stable yard, stood the steward's carriage. Inside the inn, Haldridge sat near the fire, his coat steaming. He started when he saw Edmund enter. Your Highness? I did not expect. No, you did not, Edmund said. Running so soon, Haldridge? I was merely tending to estate matters. Then you will not mind returning with me, Edmund said. We have much to discuss. The man's face hardened. Sire, I have served this house faithfully, and stolen from it, Edmund cut in. My mother discovered your thefts, did she not? She meant to expose you. That is why she died. Haldridge's breath caught. You cannot prove such things. I can, and I will. The innkeeper, sensing trouble, backed away. Haldridge stood slowly, eyes darting toward the door. Be careful, Your Highness, he said quietly. Truth is rarely kind to those who seek it. Edmund took a step closer. And lies are never kind to those who tell them. The older man's shoulders slumped. For a moment he looked tired, defeated. If you had known what it meant to serve the crown, you would not judge me, he said. I did what was necessary to protect this estate. The queen would have ruined us all with her softness. Softness, Edmund said, voice trembling. She was the only light this house ever had. Haldridge looked away. Then perhaps it is best that light went out. The prince froze. The words struck him harder than any blow. You will come with me, he said at last, forcing steadiness into his voice. You will confess before the household tomorrow. Haldridge's lips tightened. As you wish, Your Highness. They rode back through the storm in silence. When they reached the manor, the steward bowed stiffly and went to his quarters under guard. Edmund stood in the courtyard, drenched and shaking, unable to tell whether it was from rain or rage. At dawn, he summoned the household. The servants gathered, murmuring among themselves. Lily stood at the back, her face pale. Edmund entered, every trace of boyish pride gone. There has been injustice in this house, he said. One that began years ago and was buried under lies. Today it ends. Haldridge stepped forward, guarded by 2 footmen. His expression was calm again, confident. Your Highness, he began, I deny all wrongdoing. The accusations are baseless. The girl... Enough, Edmund said. He held up the memorandum in his mother's handwriting. This is her report, found among the records you tried to hide. She discovered your embezzlement and meant to confront you. You silenced her by fire. Gasps filled the room. Haldridge's composure cracked, his voice sharp. You have no proof. The ring is proof, Edmund said. It fell from her hand when she tried to escape the flames. The Whitmores found it. You dismissed them to keep them silent. The steward's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Lily, and in that glance she saw both hatred and fear. Edmund turned to the crowd. This house will no longer be ruled by deceit. Thomas Whitmore's name is cleared. His daughter will be restored among us. For the first time, applause broke from the servants, small but sincere. Holdridge's face drained of colour. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Edmund found Lily by the great doors. "It is done," he said. She looked at him, disbelief softening into gratitude. "Then my father may rest." "Yes," he said, "and so may my mother." They stood in silence, the storm beyond the windows fading to mist. Then a messenger entered, breathless. "Your Highness, the steward is gone." He slipped away through the stables. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. "He will not forgive us for this." Edmund's jaw tightened. "He will not need to. I will find him before he has the chance." He turned toward the courtyard, rain beginning again in fine, cold threads. The horse waited, restless. He mounted without hesitation. As the gates of Winthorpe opened before him, he heard Lily's voice behind him, soft, pleading, almost lost in the wind. "Your Highness, be careful." He did not look back. The road stretched ahead into the storm. He urged the horse forward, unaware that on the muddy path beyond the orchard lay a single object half buried in the dirt. Lily's pendant, its chain broken, gleaming faintly in the rain. Rain fell in steady sheets across the countryside, washing the color from the morning. The horse's hooves struck the flooded path with hollow rhythm as Prince Edmund pressed forward. The storm blurred his sight, yet he would not slow. Somewhere ahead, the steward fled with the weight of 2 decades of deceit upon him. The wind roared through the trees, bending branches low, scattering leaves across the trail. He rode until the road split at the old bridge beyond the orchard. The tracks in the mud were clear. One carriage had passed there not an hour before. Edmund urged his horse on, splashing through puddles, his cloak heavy with water. Each gust brought a flash of memory. The girl's frightened eyes, the silver ring, the flames of his mother's last night. By the time the sun tried to break through the clouds, the prince had reached a narrow lane bordered by stone walls. Ahead, the carriage had overturned. One wheel lay shattered in the ditch. The driver was gone. Edmund dismounted, scanning the fields. No sign of Holdridge, only silence and the faint creak of the carriage door swaying in the wind. He walked closer, careful, every sense alive. The trunk inside had burst open. Papers were scattered, some already melting into the mud. He picked one up and wiped away the rain. It was a ledger, his family's seal across the top. Half the pages were missing. On the remaining lines he saw entries for money transferred to false accounts, property quietly sold and repurchased under other names. Holdridge had been preparing to vanish. Edmund stuffed the pages into his coat and looked toward the woods beyond the field. Footprints led there, deep and hurried. He followed, pushing through wet branches until the sound of rushing water reached him. The steward stood at the edge of the river, cloak torn, his hat gone. When he turned, his face was pale, almost grey. "Your Highness," he said, his voice hoarse, "you should not have come." "You left me no choice," Edmund said. "You would have run with my family's honor in your pocket." Holdridge gave a bitter laugh. "Honor? What has honor ever given a man who serves? I built Winthorpe's wealth from dust, and for that I was paid in suspicion. Your mother wanted to strip me of everything. I only took what I was owed." "You burned what was hers," Edmund said, stepping closer. "You burned her." The man's eyes narrowed. "You think I lit that fire?" "No, boy. I only failed to stop it. The candle fell. I watched the flames spread. I might have called for help sooner, but I did not. That is my sin." Edmund stared at him. "You let her die to save yourself. To save the estate," Holdridge said fiercely. "Had she lived, she would have ruined you. She would have exposed your father's debts, your title's weakness. I chose survival, and I would choose it again." The river surged behind him, brown and wild from the rain. Edmund's voice dropped low. You will return with me. You will confess before the court. Holdridge shook his head. There will be no confession. He gestured toward the river. The papers you found are meaningless without my word, and you will not have it. The prince took another step. Then I will find it in every lie you left behind. Holdridge smiled faintly. You have your mother's temper. It will destroy you, as it did her. Before Edmund could answer, the steward turned and fled along the riverbank. The ground was slick. He stumbled once, regained his footing, then vanished into the trees. Edmund followed, branches whipping his face, mud pulling at his boots. The chase wound through the forest until the path opened onto a clearing and an abandoned mill. Inside, the air was thick and damp. Holdridge stood near the window, breathing hard. You cannot change the past, he said. You will damn yourself trying. I am not here to change it, Edmund said. Only to face it. The older man's hand trembled against the wall. Do you truly believe the people will praise you for dragging this scandal into the light? They will mock you, as they mocked your mother. They will whisper that you were too weak to guard her memory. Let them whisper, Edmund said. Truth does not fear whispers. Something in his calm broke the steward's composure. For a moment he looked not like a villain, but an old man cornered by his own choices. You were a child, he said quietly. You did not see what power does to people. The Queen's mercy was a blade that would have cut her own son. I only took it from her hand. Edmund's voice hardened. You speak of mercy while hiding behind greed. Enough. He took the last step forward, seizing the man's arm. You will come back with me. Holdridge tried to wrench free, but the struggle was brief. Exhaustion won. The steward sagged, defeated. Very well, he muttered. Take me back. Let the prince have his justice. By the time they reached the manor again, night had fallen. The household gathered in uneasy silence as the two men entered, drenched and mud-stained. Edmund dismissed everyone but the guards. Keep him confined, he said. No one is to see him until morning. When the doors closed, the prince leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of how little strength remained in him. He could almost hear his mother's voice, soft as memory. You will know what is right when it costs you something, my son. He went to his chamber, but rest would not come. Thoughts of Lily pierced through every attempt at calm. Had she seen what became of him? Did she still believe in the justice she had begged for? He rose before dawn and went in search of her. The servants told him she had been sent on an errand to the village before the storm worsened. No one had seen her return. A chill ran through him. He hurried to the stables, ordered a horse, and rode out once more. The rain had stopped, but the roads were deep with mud. Near the orchard, something caught the morning light. A broken chain, a small pendant lying half-buried by the path. He dismounted, picked it up, and knew at once it was hers. Fear gripped him. He searched the nearby fields, calling her name, until at last he reached the edge of the woods and heard faint voices ahead. 2 villagers were helping a young woman from a wagon that had lost its wheel. Her dress was torn, her face pale. It was Lily. He ran to her, the relief breaking through his voice. Lily. Thank God. She looked up, weak but smiling faintly. Your Highness. What happened? The carriage overturned, she said. I was returning from the mill. A man stopped me on the road. He said you were in danger. Edmund's blood ran cold. What man? I do not know. He wore your steward's coat. He felt the ground shift beneath him. Holdridge. He said you would not return, that I should go to the village and wait. Then the carriage tipped, and I do not remember the rest. He turned to the villagers. Take her to the inn, he said quickly. Send for the physician from Winthorpe. Tell him the prince commands it. She tried to speak, but he knelt beside her, taking her hand gently. You are safe now, he said. I will not let him touch you again. Her fingers tightened around his. You should not have come for me. I should have done so long ago, he said. When she was safely resting at the inn, Edmund returned to the manor. The guards met him at the door, uneasy. The steward, sire, one said. He is gone. Gone. The word struck like thunder. The window of his chamber had been forced open. The ropes that bound him lay cut on the floor. "He left in the night," the guard continued. "We found no trace until dawn." Edmund's jaw set. He will not get far. But he did not ride again that morning. Instead, he went to the great hall, where the household waited in tense silence. "You will hear the truth," he told them, "whether the man who betrayed us stands here or not." He spoke of the ring, the stolen ledgers, the memorandum in his mother's hand. He named the Whitmores as loyal servants wronged by deceit. The nobles listened, some in shame, some in disbelief. When he finished, he said quietly, "Let this house remember that pride without conscience is ruin. No title, no crown, no bloodline is beyond repentance." The word spread through the manor like a tide. That night, for the first time, the household prayed not for favor, but for forgiveness. Meanwhile, in the village, Lily woke to the sound of rain tapping against the window. The physician had gone. The innkeeper's wife sat beside her bed. "The prince asked that you rest," the woman said gently. "He will come when he can." Lily closed her eyes. Every muscle ached, yet her heart felt lighter. Perhaps at last her father's name would be cleared. Late the next morning, Edmund arrived. He dismissed the attendants and sat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I found your pendant." She smiled faintly. "I thought it lost. You have lost too much already," he said. "But I mean to change that." Her eyes searched his face. "What will you do now?" "I will make public what has been hidden," he said. "And I will rebuild what that man destroyed. Winthorpe will bear your father's name in honor, not disgrace." She turned her head toward the window, where light spilled through thin curtains. "And what of you, your highness?" He hesitated. "I do not yet know. Perhaps this is what I was meant to learn. That being born a prince means nothing if one cannot act with mercy." Her lips curved slightly. "Then you have learned well." He looked at her hand resting on the coverlet. Without thinking, he reached for it. "Lily, when you first came to me, I saw only defiance. Now I see courage. I see my mother's faith and kindness reborn in you." She drew a slow breath, her pulse quickening beneath his touch. "Do not speak so, your highness. People would not forgive such words." "Let them not forgive me," he said. "I have lived for their approval long enough." The air between them thickened with quiet understanding. She withdrew her hand gently. "You must return to the manor," she said. "Your people need you." He nodded, though his gaze lingered. "And you." "I need only peace," she said softly. "And perhaps to see the orchard bloom once more." He rose reluctantly. "You shall," he promised. "I will send for you when it is safe." After he left, Lily stared at the ring of light on the floor. Something in her chest trembled between hope and fear. 2 days later, the news came that Haldridge had been captured near the border, trying to sell the estate's jewels. He was brought back under guard, silent and pale. Edmund refused to see him alone. In the great hall, before witnesses, he demanded a confession. The steward lifted his eyes once. "Confession?" he said. "I confess only this, that every lie I told was built upon your father's silence." "What do you mean?" Edmund asked sharply. But the man only smiled, a thin, bitter smile, and said no more. That night Edmund walked the corridors until dawn, wrestling with a truth he could not reach. When at last he returned to his chamber, a messenger waited. "Sire," the man said, "the girl, Miss Whitmore, she is gone from the village. No one saw her leave." Edmund froze. "Gone?" "She left before sunrise." The innkeeper found a note. He took the folded paper and read the single line written there. "Thank you for keeping your promise. My father may rest now." His hand trembled as he set the note down. Beyond the window, the first light of morning touched the orchards. The trees were beginning to bloom again, and somewhere along the northern road, a lone figure walked through the mist, her heart certain of only one thing, that she would never again live in silence. The prince watched the horizon until the sun rose fully, and in that moment, he understood that his search for justice had only just begun. The sky over Winthorpe was clear for the first time in weeks. The storms had passed, leaving the air crisp and still, the kind of quiet that comes only after turmoil. Prince Edmund stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, his hands clasped behind his back. He had faced the steward, seen the lies stripped bare, and restored the honor of those wronged. Yet the victory brought him no triumph. Lily's absence echoed louder than any cheer could. The days since her disappearance had been long and restless. Letters had been sent to the nearby villages, inquiries made at every inn, but no word of her came. Some servants whispered that she had fled to begin anew. Others said she feared the noble's scorn. Edmund only knew that she was gone, and the house that had once seemed vast now felt hollow. He turned as his advisor approached. "Your Highness," the man said softly, "the steward awaits his audience. The council insists he must speak before the court." "Then let him speak," Edmund said. The great hall filled quickly. Courtiers gathered, curious and tense, the air heavy with expectation. Haldridge was brought in under guard. His face was drawn, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes still held their old cunning. He bowed with mock respect. "Your Highness," he said, "you summon me to confess what you already know." "I summon you," Edmund said, "to give truth its voice. You wronged my mother, you stole from this house, and you condemned an innocent man. Say it before those who once trusted you." Haldridge's lips curved faintly. "If I speak, Your Highness, will it grant you peace?" "It will grant justice," Edmund replied. The steward's gaze swept over the assembly. "Very well. I confess to taking what was not mine. I confess to silencing those who might have exposed me, and I confess to standing by when your mother perished, though I might have saved her." Gasps rippled through the hall. Edmund's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "And the Whitmores?" "They were loyal," Haldridge said. "Too loyal. The father suspected me, and I could not risk exposure. So I dismissed him and let the world believe his guilt. I have no defense, Your Highness. Only the truth you demanded." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Edmund said quietly, "You will live under guard until the crown decides your fate. But your power here is ended." Haldridge bowed his head. "So ends a faithful servant," he said, not without irony. When the guards led him away, the nobles began to murmur, some in sympathy, others in judgment. Edmund raised a hand, silencing them. "Let this be known," he said. "Winthorpe's honor was not saved by titles or lineage. It was restored by a servant's courage. Remember her name, Lily Whitmore, for she has given this house its conscience." His words carried through the hall like a vow. But when the assembly dispersed, the emptiness returned. He had done what was right, yet the person who inspired it was nowhere to see it. That evening he returned to the West Wing for the first time since the trial. The room where the fire had begun was quiet, stripped of ashes and ruin. New beams supported the ceiling, but the air still carried faint traces of smoke, like memory refusing to fade. He stood in the middle of the chamber, imagining his mother there, and Lily, two women bound by truth, separated by years. He spoke softly, to the silence itself. "Mother, I have done as you would have wished. But if this is redemption, why does it feel like loss?" Outside, the wind stirred through the trees, carrying the faintest scent of apple blossom. A week later, the messenger arrived. He carried a sealed letter, its paper plain, the handwriting firm yet delicate. Edmund broke the seal and read the first line aloud. "Your Highness, if these words reach you, it is only because I owe you farewell." He read the rest in silence. Lily had found refuge in a small coastal parish, working as a teacher for the children of fishermen. She wrote that peace had come to her, though her heart still lingered at Winthorpe. "The past has been set right," she wrote, "and that is enough. Do not seek me, for I belong now to quiet days and simple tasks." The prince folded the letter slowly, holding it for a moment as though it might vanish. Then he called for his horse. He rode through the night, the moon guiding him along narrow roads that wound toward the sea. The air grew colder, sharper, carrying the salt of the tide long before the coast appeared. By dawn, the village came into view, small cottages clustered near the cliffs, smoke curling gently from their chimneys. He found her outside a small chapel, gathering books into a basket. The sea wind lifted her hair as she turned, surprise freezing her where she stood. "Your Highness," she whispered. He dismounted and approached, stopping just before her. "You should have told me where you went," he said quietly. "I did," she said, her voice calm though her hands trembled. "In my letter. And you thought I would obey it. I hoped you would." He looked around, the quiet street, the sound of waves against the rocks. "You belong here?" "I belong where peace is possible," she said. "And here, no one remembers my father's shame or your name." He took a slow breath. "Lily, I never meant for you to live hidden from the world, nor I to live within it," she replied. "I saw too much of its cruelty. Then let me change that," he said. "Winthorpe is different now. You cleared my mother's name and restored my soul. The people must know it was you." She shook her head. "They know enough. Let truth speak for itself." He studied her face, the strength and gentleness that had once shamed him into humility. "Do you hate me for what I did?" Her gaze softened. "No, Your Highness. I pitied you once, but never hated you. Pride is a harder chain than any man can see. And yet you freed me from it," he said. She turned toward the sea, the wind pulling at her shawl. "Perhaps we freed each other." They stood in silence, listening to the surf crash against the cliffs. Then she said quietly, "You must return home. The kingdom needs its prince. And what do you need?" "Only that you remember me kindly." He almost smiled. Kindly is too small a word. For a long moment, neither moved. The air between them carried every word left unspoken. Then she lowered her gaze. "Goodbye, Your Highness." He reached into his coat and withdrew something small, a silver ring, polished and gleaming in the morning light. "You once returned this to me," he said. "Now I return it to you, not as a symbol of duty, but of what we have both endured." She stared at it, her throat tightening. "I cannot take it." "You must," he said. "It belongs where truth was born." Her fingers brushed his as she accepted it. "Then I will keep it as a reminder," she said softly. Not of pain, but of courage. When he left her there on the cliffs, she watched until the sound of his horse faded into the distance. She held the ring against her heart and whispered, "Farewell." He returned to Winthorpe that evening, weary but resolved. The manor was alive again, not with celebration, but with quiet industry. The servants moved freely, the tension that once filled every corridor gone. He gathered them in the hall once more. "This house will bear no more silence," he said. "Each of you shall have a voice in what we build. Winthorpe will stand not for rank, but for honesty." The servants bowed, murmuring their gratitude. The steward's office was reassigned to a humble accountant from the village, and the library, once locked and neglected, was opened again. Edmund ordered that a memorial be placed in the gardens, a small stone inscribed with the names of Thomas and Lily Whitmore, symbols of the truth that had redeemed them all. In the weeks that followed, peace settled over the estate. The orchards bloomed, the halls brightened, and laughter, gentle, genuine laughter, returned. And yet, for Edmund, one absence lingered. Every evening he walked through the gardens at dusk, stopping by the memorial beneath the apple trees. Sometimes he thought he could almost hear her voice, quiet as wind through blossoms. He would close his eyes and remember the way she had looked at him that day by the sea, without fear, without bitterness, as though she had already forgiven everything. One night, as he stood there, a soft knock came at the gate. A stable boy approached, carrying a folded piece of paper. "For you, sire," the boy said. A messenger from the coast left it. Edmund opened it under the moonlight. It was a letter, brief and steady. "Your Highness, I hope this finds you well. The children at the school send greetings. The sea is kind this year, and I am learning its rhythm. Do not mourn what is past. You have given Winthorpe back its heart. That is more than enough for both of us. L." He read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in his coat. The ache in his chest was not sorrow now, but something quieter, a peace that had waited too long to be felt. The next morning he called for the carriage. The driver looked at him curiously when he ordered it prepared for the coast. "Your Highness," the man asked, "shall I inform the steward of your destination?" "No," Edmund said, smiling faintly. "This journey is not of state. It is of the heart. By the time the carriage rolled through the gates, the sun was high and warm. The orchards swayed gently in the wind, their blossoms falling like snow. Edmund looked back once, at the manor that had been both his burden and his redemption, and then ahead, toward the sea where truth and forgiveness waited together. He did not know what words he would speak when he saw her again. Only that this time, there would be no ranks between them, no pride, no fear. And as the carriage disappeared down the long white road, Winthorpe stood silent behind him, its windows gleaming in the light, the ring of silver clouds above promising the calm that always comes after the storm. The journey to the coast took 2 days. The roads were soft with spring rain, and every field seemed to glimmer under the pale sun. Prince Edmund kept the window open, letting the air move through the carriage. He felt no haste, only a strange calm, as though the road itself had already forgiven everything behind him. When he reached the village, the sea stretched wide and endless before him. Waves broke softly along the shore, their rhythm slow and patient. The scent of salt and wildflowers mingled in the breeze. He saw the small chapel near the cliffs, its bell glinting faintly. Beside it, children played with kites made of bright cloth. Their laughter carried across the sand. He stepped down from the carriage. Fishermen paused in their work to watch the finely dressed man approach. They recognized him, of course. Everyone did. Yet none bowed, for the look on his face asked for no ceremony. He moved past them with a nod and followed the narrow path leading up toward the schoolhouse. Inside, the voices of children filled the air. They repeated words from a book, halting and eager. And then he heard her voice, steady, warm, alive. Very good, Thomas. Now what do we call a promise that is never broken? A vow, Miss Lily, a child answered proudly. She smiled. Yes, a vow. Remember that word well. Edmund stepped into the doorway, unnoticed at first. She stood by the window, sunlight in her hair, her hands dusted with chalk. It was a simple scene, but to him it was more beautiful than any court ceremony he had ever attended. When the lesson ended, the children gathered their books and ran out into the bright air. She turned to tidy the table and froze when she saw him. For a moment, neither spoke. You came, she said at last. I said I would, he replied. Her voice faltered. It has been months. Too many, he said softly, but I could not stay away any longer. She looked down at her hands. The world has not missed me, Your Highness. He stepped closer. You are mistaken. My world has been empty without you. Her breath caught. You should not say such things. You are a prince. You belong to your people, to your court, to— I belong, he interrupted gently, to the one who taught me what honor truly means. She shook her head, trying to steady herself. You owe me nothing. You repaid your debt the day you restored my father's name. This is not debt, he said. It is gratitude. It is love. Her eyes widened. Love. Yes, he said, his voice quiet but certain. I have fought wars, faced lies, rebuilt a broken house, yet none of it changed me as you did. I thought I understood strength, but you showed me it was mercy. I thought I knew truth, but you gave it life. She tried to speak, but the words refused to come. Your Highness, call me Edmund, he said quickly. Just Edmund. No titles, no distance. Her lips parted, uncertain. Edmund, then. But what do you hope to find here? He smiled faintly. Peace, if you will share it, and perhaps a promise of tomorrow. She turned toward the window, watching the sea stretch into light. You would live away from the court, leave your duties. I have done my duty, he said. Now I wish to do what my heart demands. The silence between them grew tender, filled with the sound of waves and the faint cry of gulls. She finally faced him again. And if the world refuses to understand, then let it refuse, he said. I have spent too long living for its approval. She searched his eyes, seeing not the proud prince who had once mocked her, but a man stripped of pretense, patient and real. Her resistance trembled, fragile as glass. I do not know how to be a queen, she said softly. Then be what you are, he answered. That is all I ever wanted. She closed her eyes, fighting tears that would not stay hidden. I once dreamed of hearing such words, she whispered. But dreams fade, Edmund. They do not survive the world. Then let us prove otherwise, he said. He reached into his coat and drew out the silver ring. The same ring that had begun their story, tarnished once by fire and shame, now bright again in his hand. He looked at it for a long moment before speaking. This belonged to my mother, he said. It was lost in tragedy, found in truth, and carried through every moment that shaped us. I once thought it cursed. Now I see it was meant to lead me here. He took her hand gently. Lily Whitmore, will you wear it again? This time not as proof of pain, but as a promise of all that has been forgiven. Her tears fell freely then, though her smile trembled through them. You would bind your life to mine, a servant's daughter. You are no one's servant, he said. You are the reason I learned what freedom means. Her fingers shook as he slid the ring onto her hand. It fit perfectly, as if time itself had waited for this moment. Outside, the children's laughter rose again, mingling with the wind and the sea. She looked down at the ring, then up at him, her voice breaking with emotion. What will they say at the palace? He smiled. Let them say what they will. The crown has enough pride without mine. And what will the people say? That their prince has chosen a woman of courage, he said, and that perhaps love is wiser than rank. The sunlight deepened, gold spilling across the room. She stepped closer, her heart beating fast. I never thought I would see this day, nor did I, he said softly. But I will spend every day that follows, making it worthy of us. Her hand rose to his cheek, hesitant at first, then sure. You have changed, Edmund. So have you, he murmured. You once came to me covered in dust and courage. Now you stand before me shining with grace. She laughed through her tears. And you, once so proud, now speak like a poet. Only because you taught me the language, he said. Their laughter faded into silence, the kind that speaks more than words. He leaned closer, but stopped just short, waiting. She met his gaze without fear this time. The distance between them disappeared. When they parted, she whispered, Does this mean I must return to Winthorpe? If you wish, he said. It can be your home again. Or we can make another. I no longer care where we live, only that we do. And she thought for a long moment, then nodded. Then let it be Winthorpe. The place where all began should also be where all begins anew. They returned together a week later. The news spread before them. The prince had returned with the woman who had once been the house's servant. But when they entered the manor gates, there was no mockery, no whispers. The servants lined the courtyard, bowing in quiet joy. Old Mrs. Penfield, who had worked in the kitchen since his childhood, curtsied low. Welcome home, Your Highness, she said, then turned to Lily. Welcome home, Miss Whitmore. The title hung in the air like music. Lily's eyes glistened. Edmund took her hand and led her up the marble steps, the same place where years ago she had knelt in dust and shame. He stopped midway, turned to her, and said loudly enough for all to hear, Once I mocked this woman for daring to stand before me. Today, I stand before her as the man she made worthy of her love. A hush swept through the crowd. Then applause began, not of formality, but of heartfelt affection. The manor itself seemed to breathe again. That evening, they walked through the orchards, the trees heavy with blossoms. The scent of apples filled the air. He picked one of the flowers and placed it in her hair. Do you remember what your father used to say about the trees? He asked. She smiled. That even a tree remembers kindness. Then these trees must remember you well, he said. They reached the old memorial stone under the largest apple tree. The names of Thomas and Lily Whitmore were carved there, side by side. She touched it gently. He would have been proud, she whispered. Edmund took her hand again. He would have been proud of us both. The sun dipped low, turning the orchard to gold. He drew her close, his voice low against her ear. You once said peace was all you wished for. Is this peace? She looked around. The blossoms, the light, the manor in the distance, and then back at him. Yes, she said. And joy beyond peace. They were married that summer, in the small chapel by the sea where they had first spoken without rank or crown between them. The villagers came bringing flowers and laughter. The children she had taught carried ribbons down the aisle. There were no nobles, no grand speeches, only promises whispered and meant. When the vows were spoken, Edmund placed the ring on her hand once more. "This ring has seen fire and sorrow," he said. "Let it now see only love." She smiled through tears. "Then let it never be taken off again." After the ceremony, they returned to Winthorpe together as husband and wife. The manor's windows glowed with candlelight. Music filled the halls. But later, when the guests had gone and the night turned still, they slipped away to the terrace. The moon lay over the orchards like a silver veil. She leaned against the railing, her face turned toward the stars. "Do you still hear the whispers of the past?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "But they no longer frighten me." He wrapped an arm around her. "Nor me. The fire that once burned us only lit the path we were meant to walk." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Then we have walked it well." He kissed her hand where the ring shone faintly. "We will walk it always." And for a long time they stood there, saying nothing more. The waves could be heard far beyond the hills, steady and endless. The wind carried the scent of blossoms, of rain long past, of beginnings. At last she spoke, her voice a whisper that felt like prayer. "Do you believe love can truly heal everything?" He smiled, drawing her closer. "It healed me. It freed you. I can ask no greater proof." Her head rested against his shoulder, and the world, at last, was quiet. The next morning, the bells of Winthorpe rang across the valley. Not for war or mourning, but for celebration. The servants opened every window. The villagers gathered at the gates. The prince and his bride walked out to greet them hand in hand. Lily's gown was simple, her hair crowned with small white blossoms. Edmund wore no crown, no sash, only a plain coat and the smile of a man who had found the life he had long sought. When he addressed the people, his voice carried over the gardens. "Let Winthorpe remember," he said, "that love born of truth will outlast every title, every wall, every fire. Let it remember the girl who taught a prince to kneel." The crowd cheered, and the sound rolled through the orchards, up to the hills and down to the sea. Later, as they walked among the trees, Lily paused beneath the one where the memorial stood. She turned to him, the light soft upon her face. "Do you think they hear us?" "I think they smile," he said. The petals fell around them, pale and silent, settling in her hair. He brushed one away, his hand lingering against her cheek. "You once said you had nothing left to lose," he murmured. "Now you have everything." She smiled, her eyes shining. "And so do you." He drew her close once more, and the world seemed to vanish. The walls, the sky, the weight of years. Only the wind remained, carrying their laughter through the blossoms. And as the evening came, soft and golden, the prince and the girl who had once stood covered in dust walked together beneath the trees, no longer bound by sorrow, but by love that had risen, at last, from the ashes. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.